Have you ever heard the rumor that ejaculating every day, or at least very frequently, could act as a protective shield against prostate cancer? It sounds like one of those things you read on a random internet forum, or perhaps something guys tell each other to justify their habits. But does this actually make sense scientifically, or is it just another urban legend? Today, we are going to dive deep into this topic. We aren't just going to guess. We are going to break down a very serious scientific study published in 2018 in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. This wasn't just a small survey. It was a massive systematic review and meta-analysis designed specifically to answer this exact question. Does increasing the volume of ejaculations protect you from prostate cancer? If you're new here, welcome. We discuss health, science, and the facts behind the headlines. Let's get straight into the data. Can sexual activity really be a medical prevention strategy? To understand the answer, we first have to understand the source. When we talk about scientific evidence, not all studies are created equal. The publication we are looking at today is a meta-analysis. In the hierarchy of scientific evidence, a meta-analysis sits at the very top. This is because researchers don't just run one experiment. They comb through major medical databases like PubMed, Embase, and Web of Science to find all relevant studies that have ever been conducted on the topic. They then filter out the low-quality ones and combine the data from the best studies to reach a super conclusion. This gives the findings much more statistical weight and solidity than any single experiment could provide. The researchers in this 2018 project aimed to find a direct relationship between sexual activity and the risk of developing prostate cancer. They started with a massive pool of potential studies and narrowed it down to the 21 highest quality papers. Included in this massive data set were 55,000 men who had been diagnosed with prostate cancer, compared against a control group of 72,000 men who were cancer-free. This is a huge sample size. When you are comparing the habits of over 100,000 men, you can start to see patterns that might be invisible in smaller groups. They looked at both prospective studies, which follow men forward in time, and retrospective studies, which look back at past behaviors. The goal was to see if there was a dose-response relationship. In medicine, a dose-response means that if a little bit of something causes an effect, a lot of it should cause a bigger effect. So, does more ejaculation equal less cancer? After crunching the numbers on these tens of thousands of men, the researchers came to a fascinating conclusion. They found that men who reported a higher frequency of ejaculation did, in fact, have a statistically significant lower risk of developing prostate cancer. But it wasn't just a vague more is better. They actually identified a specific threshold where the benefit became clear. The data showed that this protective effect was indeed dose-dependent. The study highlighted that men who ejaculated 21 times or more per month had a 20% lower risk of developing prostate cancer compared to the baseline group. The baseline group in these studies was typically defined as men who ejaculated roughly 4 to 7 times a month. Think about that number for a second. 21 times a month. That is roughly 5 times a week or almost daily. The statistics suggest that moving from a low frequency to this high frequency correlates with a 1/5 reduction in risk. That is a significant margin in the world of oncology. However, there is a very important nuance here that we need to clarify. This protection was most clearly observed for low-grade tumors. These are the types of cancers that are generally less aggressive, slower growing, and often described as indolent. Now, you might be wondering about the method. Does the source of the ejaculation matter? Is there a difference between sexual intercourse with a partner and masturbation? This is a common question, and the study actually looked into this. They evaluated the total frequency of sexual activity. The conclusion was quite straightforward. The biological mechanism of ejaculation seems to be the key factor, regardless of how it is achieved. Whether the ejaculation occurred during intercourse or through masturbation, the protective benefit remained consistent in the data. The study did not find that you needed a partner to get the health benefit. It appears to be a physiological process rather than a social or relational one. However, we have to be precise about what this prevents. While the reduction in risk for low-grade, slow-growing tumors was statistically significant, the evidence was not strong enough to say the same for high-grade, aggressive prostate cancers. The study did not find a definitive protective link for the dangerous, rapidly spreading tumors that are most life-threatening. So, while frequent ejaculation appears to help prevent the onset of the disease generally, it might not be a shield against the most aggressive forms of cancer. So, why would this happen? What is the logic behind it? Why would a biological function like ejaculation lower cancer risk? Scientists have a few leading theories that attempt to explain this phenomenon. The most popular and scientifically plausible explanation is known as the prostate stagnation hypothesis, or more simply, the idea of cleaning the pipes. Your prostate gland produces fluids that make up a significant portion of semen. These fluids contain various chemical substances, including minerals like zinc, but also potentially harmful compounds that can accumulate over time. The theory suggests that if a man does not ejaculate frequently, these fluids sit inside the prostate gland for longer periods. This stagnation can lead to the accumulation of intraluminal carcinogens, substances that can cause cancer. Over time, these concentrated fluids can cause oxidative stress and create a pro-inflammatory environment inside the gland. Chronic inflammation and oxidative stress are known precursors to cellular damage and cancer development. By ejaculating frequently, you are essentially increasing the turnover of these fluids. You are flushing out the system, preventing potential carcinogens from lingering in the prostatic ducts and reducing that oxidative stress. It's a mechanism of renewal. Speaking of renewal and keeping those pathways clear, we know that optimizing blood flow is the single most important factor for male vitality. If you feel like your performance isn't what it used to be, maybe things are feeling a bit stagnant or limp in the bedroom, you need to see this. There is a bizarrely simple 7-second daily habit involving a specific purple tonic that is helping thousands of men reverse the root biological cause of dysfunction. Unlike dangerous pills that just mask the problem, this targets the enzyme that actually kills your blood flow, naturally restoring the rock-hard hardness and stamina of your 20s. I want you to see exactly how it works. Go ahead and point your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen right now to watch a short video explanation. If you're watching on your phone, you can just click the link I've pinned in the top comment below. Seriously, don't ignore this. It's a total game changer for your confidence. Now, aside from the biological aspect, there is also a second, more indirect theory. This relates to overall lifestyle and health. Men who are able to maintain a high frequency of sexual activity, ejaculating 21 times a month or more, often have better overall health markers. To sustain that level of activity, you generally need a functioning vascular system, good hormone levels, and decent physical fitness. It is possible that the protection we are seeing is partly because these men are just healthier in general. They might sleep better, have lower stress levels due to the release of oxytocin and endorphins during orgasm, and have stronger immune systems. We know that chronic stress and poor sleep are risk factors for many diseases. Therefore, the sexual activity might be a marker of a healthy lifestyle, which in itself protects against cancer, rather than the ejaculation being the sole cause of the protection. However, as with all scientific data, we need to be critical. We shouldn't just read the headline and assume it's a magic bullet. There are limitations to this study that we must consider to have an honest view of the situation. The first major limitation is what scientists call recall bias. Most of the data in these studies comes from questionnaires where men are asked to remember their sexual habits from years ago. If I asked you exactly how many times you ejaculated per month 10 years ago, could you give me a precise number? Probably not. Human memory is flawed. Furthermore, when it comes to sexual history, men might consciously or unconsciously alter their answers due to ego, embarrassment, or social expectations. This introduces a margin of error in the data. Another issue is the demographic scope. The 21 studies included in this meta-analysis were primarily conducted in Western countries, mostly in Europe, the United States, and Australia. This means the data is heavily skewed toward Caucasian populations in developed nations. We don't know for sure if these findings translate perfectly to other ethnicities, genetic backgrounds, or populations in different environmental conditions. And finally, we have to revisit the distinction between low-grade and high-grade cancer. The fact that the protective benefit wasn't clearly established for high-risk, aggressive cancers is a crucial detail. It suggests that while lifestyle factors like this can help, they are not a cure-all for the genetic or mutation-driven causes of aggressive disease. So, what is the takeaway here? Should you change your habits based on this? The evidence suggests that yes, there is a link. Ejaculating 21 times or more per month seems to be the sweet spot for a statistically significant reduction in the risk of low-grade prostate cancer. The mechanism of flushing out the prostate and reducing oxidative stress makes biological sense. But, and this is a big but, ejaculating more does not make you immune. You cannot ejaculate your way out of a bad diet, obesity, or smoking. It is not a magic vaccine. If you are overweight, if you have unmanaged diabetes, high blood pressure, or if you smoke, these are massive risk factors that likely outweigh the benefits of ejaculation frequency. Real prevention is holistic. It involves a diet rich in vegetables and low in processed fats, maintaining a healthy body weight, exercising, and managing your stress. Most importantly, this information should never replace medical screening. Ejaculating frequently is not an excuse to skip your checkups. Every man needs to be vigilant. Current guidelines suggest that you should start screening for prostate cancer, usually involving a PSA blood test and a physical exam, starting at age 45 or 50, depending on your family history. If you have a father or brother who had prostate cancer, you need to start earlier. Ultimately, sexual health is a window into your overall health. If you can maintain a healthy, active sex life, that's great for your heart, your brain, and yes, it seems it's good for your prostate too. But view it as just one piece of a much larger puzzle of taking care of yourself. Don't rely on it as your only defense. Take care of your body, eat well, and go see your doctor.